Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the 7th online webinar of the European Liberal Forum's new series, Liberties in Lockdown. And this week we're looking at the effects of cybersecurity during the coronavirus pandemic. As some of you might have seen, for example, one of the airline companies from the UK has just been hacked in the last couple of days, jeopardizing the private data and the banking data of a lot of its clients. So the threat of cyber attacks is very, very real for private businesses, for individuals who are working from home right now. And it's just looking at the stats from various agencies, we only think that these cyber attacks will grow. So I think it's a very topical issue, and I'm very glad to welcome our speakers and our great moderator today. I'm really wishing you all a very, very good webinar. And I will now hand over to Ms. Jana Human, who's a member of the Defense Expert Group at the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, and she will guide us through today's webinar. Thank you so much and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Andre. Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting me to moderate this discussion today. It's a great pleasure. So as was said, it's the 7th online event of the series Liberties in Lockdown by ELF. And we are indeed talking about cybersecurity today, which is a very important topic nowadays because as we all have noticed and have seen, the current crisis has brought a wide digitalization to our lives across different sectors and across different areas of our lives, including work, education, and even our private lives as well, because many of us have been cut from our families. So digital tools and digital infrastructure is something that is allowing us to be in touch with the ones that matter to us. But this increased reliance on digital services and digital infrastructure has actually made us a bit more vulnerable. And this vulnerability is something that hackers and attackers are willing to exploit, definitely. And we have seen various reports published by the governments and by international organizations, by Interpol, and all of them agree to the fact that during the pandemic, there has been a definite increase in the attacks. Most of them were using social engineering tools, phishing and ransomware to get into systems. There have been also a great increase in the registration of malicious domains and DDoS attacks. And the last one is actually something that is only expecting to be growing in the future. So the number is actually quite high, and we realize that we actually need to make sure that our systems are secure. We need to address this issue very much. Even if we look at the official statements by the World Health Organization, they have publicly said that there has been a 5-fold increase in the numbers of attacks on their staff, which also makes a great impression on us. So today we're going to ask ourselves and our great speakers, why is it the case that during the pandemic there was an increase in the cyber attacks? And also, how can we address these new threats? Who should be the ones who will address these threats most effectively? Are these the nation states? Are these international organizations like EU, for example? And also, where are those limits between enhancing our cybersecurity and actually protecting our cyber liberties? So before I start with our first speaker, I would like to actually point out some technical details. So I would like to remind all the participants that it's an online event and it will be recorded and shared on all the social media channels and the website of the ELF. Also, during the speakers' interventions, there will be a webinar Q&A section below. It will be working, so please, you're very much welcome to write your questions to our speakers. You're also able to upvote some of the questions if you consider them to be most relevant. And if you would like to ask your question live, please write this in the Q&A section as well, so that we can give you the floor to do that live. Okay, so on that point, I think I can give the floor to our first speaker. It's Nicolae Ștefănuță. He's the member of the European Parliament from the Renewed Europe group. A small remark, he will need to leave us a bit earlier, so please, if you would like to ask a question, write it during his intervention, so that we can ask him after his speech. Please, Nico, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna, and thanks a lot for pronouncing my name the right way. That means you practice. That's very good. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicolae Ștefănuță. I'm from Romania. I'm an MEP representing the Union to Save Romania, which is a party member to the Renew Group and to the ALDE party, and hence also our great connection with the European Liberal Forum. Thank you for organizing this great webinar. It's called Liberties in Lockdown, but I was thinking this morning, when reviewing my notes and reviewing your notes, that maybe it should be called Liberties Under Siege, because it's not as if the liberties are curtailed or under threat right now because of the lockdown, but I would say rather because some people, some geopolitical actors see this crisis as an opportunity. And we have to know that every single crisis there is could be seen on the geopolitical scene as an opportunity for some malicious actors. And COVID-19 could not have been different. And saying that, I would like to start by saying that COVID-19 has changed our lives and the way we operate, right? You can see me, I'm at home. Even though I'm wearing a shirt, you know, maybe I'm wearing shorts underneath, you don't know that. You might see my dog walking in the image. You might get a lot of information just from looking at the screen. Imagine if you have more hacking skills, that you can actually get a lot more information through malicious techniques. So by the fact that the crisis has changed the way we operate, the way we rely on technology, the way we are constantly dependent on technology because of the crisis and because of the social distancing, basically there is no more, let me tell you something in the ear, there is only, let me tell you something through my device. So that means the playing field has changed with the crisis. And that's the first point I would like to make. And that will stay with us for a long time, I believe. Because the crisis is far from being over. This is just the first stage that happened, and we are entering new stages. So I would like us to have that mindset in this discussion. Secondly, conscious that this is going to be the case, several European institutions have issued guidelines. For instance, the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, ENISA, has issued guidelines on how to protect your cyberspace, including for most of these businesses who are performing business on their telework now, but even more importantly for critical infrastructure, because the fight we will see in the next month is for who will rule this new world, right? I mean, information will be key. Information about the development of a new vaccine, information about the development of essential medicines, information as such about anything will be the new prey out there. I mean, if you can imagine right now, there are, I don't know in your countries, but in my countries, there's a war going on about what the reality is, with lots of fake news and lots of misinformation being placed on the market about what caused the coronavirus, how to solve it, is lockdown needed, what kind of measures are taken and not. And more often than not, there have been noticed that several of these links of people putting this kind of information lead straight to geopolitical actors who are interested in a certain outcome. Let me just say something. Not only external actors are interested in dominating our cyberspace, but also internal. I've seen that many of the fake news production and other types of disinformation actually is domestic. About 70% of it comes from domestic sources. So there are parties out there who are using the crisis in an illegitimate way. And I'm personally very, very offended by that. I don't think the European space for liberties should allow that kind of a phenomenon to go on. Now, having said that, because we are discussing about cybersecurity and not fake news and disinformation, I want to say that the most common occurrences, and you've mentioned them, Jana, were malicious domains. For instance, how to get your information about COVID-19 and what's happening. I mean, my father has recently discovered WhatsApp, and he keeps sending me all sorts of funny stuff that he gets on the internet. I'm not sure where he gets it, but a lot of it is just trash, and a lot of it is just disinformation outright. And I'm very concerned about the circuits that go, including using people's private messenger tools, right? I mean, WhatsApp is supposed to be a private messenger, Facebook, etc. However, a lot of these sources of malicious domains and malicious information do circulate through private tools such as that one. Obviously, malware is another type of concern. We have all received perhaps different emails, different links, websites, spam emails, etc. in an amount that is perhaps larger than ever before. And one other phenomenon that is very, very concerning is ransomware, especially as regards critical infrastructure. I mean, if cyber hackers from somewhere, doesn't matter where actually, because this is also a private enterprise as well as a national, state activity. If they manage to get into a hospital and the hospital only has that many hours to deal with it because it has to actually treat patients and not be blocked and have their whole IT system on its knees, then you can imagine that they can perhaps cave in to very illegitimate and threatening demands for ransom. We have seen this, for instance, in the Czech Republic, there was an attack on Brno University Hospital. I have other examples also from the US on cyber attacks, etc. Now, I would conclude by just saying that we have to be stronger at the level of the European Union, on this cracking down on. Europol is doing a lot of things. Other European institutions, the ENISA and other agencies are doing a lot of things. But all of it is a drop in the ocean. We need member states perhaps to share more competence on cybersecurity and give some more power to the EU to do this. Perhaps we should think of a European firewall that would be something more resistant, because we do have our internal protections that are pretty strong and people rely on them. However, towards the exterior, we are not that protected. And, our entire European way of life could be under threat for this. And thirdly, and most importantly, I believe there will be an information war and a cyber war going on about what the most important resources of the future will be. And this could start from vaccine, number one, could start from information, medical information and healthcare information that needs to be protected. There's a huge competition going on out there, that, on innovation in this field. And thirdly, the way people think, winning the hearts and minds of Europeans. And I believe that will be a battleground that will play out in the next months and years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nico. Very insightful and interesting speech you have given. Actually, maybe as a follow-up to what you have said. So you said that in order to tackle these new challenges that appear in the cyberspace amid the COVID-19 crisis, we need to have more cross-border cooperation. We need to give more competences to the EU in terms of dealing with these issues. So maybe as a follow-up to this, where do you think lies this red line between giving the governments and the international organizations or the EU the power to basically provide us with more security, and where do we give up on our cyber liberties? Where do we allow that? What can we give out in order to have more security? And where do we say stop and we say here are our cyber liberties and we do not want to go further? So where do you draw the border? How much do you think we can do?
Especially coming from the European Liberal Forum. No, I mean, personal liberties, personal information, etc., are fundamental for our political family, and that's a key issue. But however, even liberals out there know one basic thing. You know, when John Locke came with the idea of the social contract, he said that before the social contract existed, life was nasty, brutish, and short, which means, you know, we can come back to a sort of basic ideal of all, you know, all human liberties are without margins, etc. However, we know that that's not how it works. Your liberties end where other people's start, and secondly, there is no such thing as complete security without having a kind of a common agreement that we need somebody to protect those liberties. So I wouldn't put this as an antithesis. I mean, the fact that we have certain arrangement of society is also curtailment of our liberties, if you put it that way. So I don't see these liberties as being, you know, something that do not have margins. And it took a few centuries of our human thinking to realize that we need to have a social contract. Governments can be legitimate to protect people's liberties, and I do believe that's the case even now. It's another century and other priorities, but the fundamentals are the same.
Yes, you mentioned the concept of social contract. So do you think, given the current reality, maybe we should rethink those classical concepts like social contract, like resilience, defense, to make them fit to this digital age and to the current challenges that we are facing, especially during the COVID crisis, when those issues, they become more and more important?
Yeah, we tend to think this century is different from all the other ones, but it's not different. It's just new challenges to the same kind of concepts. And I think our liberties are well anchored in Europe, and we should stay with this mindset that we cherish our liberties and governments do only what we let them to do. So yes, indeed, we do have new challenges that do require new kind of thinking, new leadership. I'm also thinking about artificial intelligence and how that will play out in our lives. But I also tend to see these as opportunities, perhaps. I mean, artificial intelligence can help us in a lot of ways. One of it could be in fighting fake news and disinformation as a first kind of tool that can help us. I know that Liberal Forum and our entire family has had strong debates about the tracking apps and how those work. I do believe that we can work around that as well and not just be scared about it, because we need to go into a phase where strategic testing is done, and it's something that has sense for governments. And unfortunately, without information, we cannot do that. Having said that, it has to be done on the buy-in philosophy, so that people have to agree, of course, to what information they supply and how much of it they do. I saw that in South Korea, for instance, some of the tracking apps went wrong, revealing all sorts of information about a person's personal life that they shouldn't have. So I'm very concerned about that.
Yes, thank you very much. I really liked how at the beginning you said that the crisis is an opportunity, but in a negative way, it's an opportunity for the hackers. But then at the end, you mentioned that it's also an opportunity for us to basically use the digital tools to improve the situation. And I think it's important how we handle the technology, right? So
I mean, I know that it's kind of hard at 9:45 a.m. to speak about social contract and these very philosophical issues, but I do believe that when they, you know, Michelle Obama said this, no, when they go low, we go high. I like this phrase, and I think if the world goes low in terms of cyber attacks, etc., we need to go high. We need to provide an alternative model, something that's deeply European, and that will appeal to the rest of the world, to other citizens as well, I'm sure.
Great. Thank you very much, Nico. I know that you have to leave us a bit early, as I said at the beginning. So thank you for taking your time and for joining us early in the morning for this talk. It was a very interesting intervention from you. And maybe here I will move to our second speaker, Luigi Martino, who is the director at the Center for Cybersecurity and International Relations Studies. He's a professor in international relations and cybersecurity at the University of Florence. So please, Luigi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jana, and good morning, everybody. Thank you to the European Liberal Forum for organizing these very great and relevant webinars, because of the topics, it's a very hot topics, and then I think that this is a great opportunity to spread awareness about these topics, and thank you very much. So I have just 10 minutes, and the topic is very vast. And then I would like to focalize our attention on a few points, key points, in order maybe to open a debate on these key points. Then I would like to start from the title of the event, which is very interesting, because it's open, it's based on an open question. Then it's possible to balance liberties and security, liberty and health security, and in particular in democracies and democratic regime, and how cybersecurity could enhance our liberties during the lockdown, and in particular in general during the COVID crisis. Then this is a very open question, but the core question, in my opinion, is based on how we can maintain the European Union cybersecurity pillars during this crisis. The European cybersecurity pillars are based on 3 words, which are revolutionary words about cybersecurity, because the European Union position on cybersecurity, it's based on the main statement that cyberspace must be open, safe, and secure. Then these 3 pillars are very relevant, in particular after the speech the statement provided by Nico and you, Jan. Then, in other words, we are in front of a very increasing impact of cyber attacks during the COVID crisis, in particular on 2 main targets. The first target is like institutional targets or essential services such as hospitals or critical infrastructure, but in particular against hospitals. Or the research center, which are operating on COVID vaccines research to contrast the virus. The second target, it's quite interesting, because of the cyber attacks, the increasing cyber attacks are against individuals, European Union citizens. Then this is very important to understand, and then I think that we need to improve our awareness about this through trends. Then the consequence of this, in my opinion, to use the title of the conference, is that in cyberspace we don't have boundaries, of course. Then I think that not only my home is not my castle, but given that in cyberspace we don't have boundaries, my state, my country is not my castle. But for this reason, we need a comprehensive approach of the European Union in order to manage the the consequences, the dynamics, malicious dynamics of cyber trends, the cyber attacks, and the malicious cyber activities stemming from cyberspace. Then, indeed, we have a legal framework, policy framework at the European Union level in order to contrast cyber attacks against critical infrastructure or essential services. For instance, we have the NIS directive. We have a legal framework to protect European Union citizens. We have the GDPR, for instance. And then we have another legal framework, which is represented by the Cybersecurity Act, which is a very relevant act, a regulation in order to enhance the position of the European Union on technology and operational aspect. And then we have this existing legal framework, policy framework, operational framework, which allow us to create this cybersecurity European Union framework on cyber security and cyber defense. But at the same time, I think that we should enhance an appropriate external and internal action to enhance our cybersecurity and cyber defense. For instance, at the external level, we have another useful action carried out by the European Union, the cyber diplomacy toolbox, for instance. Then I think that the cyber diplomacy toolbox, we can consider the cyber diplomacy toolbox as the diplomatic shield of the European Union and the member states to contrast, for instance, state-sponsored cyber attacks. And then this is a very revolutionary at international level. For the first time, supranational entities such as the European Union apply this cyber diplomacy toolbox to contrast state-sponsored attacks with economic sanctions, for instance, and so on. But I would like to conclude my brief speech with the internal actions that the European Union in general and member states in particular should apply in order to enhance the cybersecurity and to contrast malicious activities. But in particular, I would like to use the Nico's statement and your statement, Jana, in considering cybersecurity not only as the capability to contrast threats, but also cybersecurity as an opportunity. Which kind of opportunity? An opportunity, for instance, to enhance the European Union position at international level in the technological field. Then an opportunity, for instance, of the European Union to become the third actor at international level, for instance, regarding the 5G confrontation between China and United States. Then at the end of the day, the capability of the European Union to improve the digital single market and to become an relevant international actors and cybersecurity and the market of the technology and so on. The second point is related to the how to achieve this position. I think that the best way is to improve the existing public-private partnership approach of the European Union, PPP based not only on public and private actors with the same common objectives, for instance, but also including academia, of course, but also the civilian society in order to create this virtual loop in order to achieve the first point. And the last point that I would like to share with you, it's about the most relevant point, in my opinion, and it's related to the individual behaviors in cyberspace. Because the one trend that we analyzed at the Center for Cybersecurity and International Relations Studies at the University of Florence, based during the analysis that we conducted with the focus on the sentiment analysis of individuals on social media related to the COVID crisis. It's related to the increasing campaign of fake news, disinformation, and cyber attacks against citizens, individuals, and so on. And this imply a specific topics, specific issues, sorry, related to the behavior of citizens in cyberspace and how to improve an appropriate behavior of these citizens in cyberspace. And in particular, the European Union in general and member states should consider to improve their cyber awareness campaigns, cyber hygiene or cyber training campaigns in order, for instance, to improve the behavior of the citizens in cyberspace, and then to achieve and maintain an open, safe, and secure cyberspace. Thank you. This is my just 2 cents of my background for this relevant events. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Luigi. Very insightful. I actually have a lot of questions, but I will try to put it into maybe one. You mentioned a lot of, let's say, different approaches that the nation states and also EU are taking to tackle the threats and challenges that appear in the cyberspace. You mentioned, for example, the cyber diplomacy toolkit and many others. So my question would be, do you think that this, let's say, cross-border approach to tackling cybersecurity challenges is a good approach, or do you think maybe it's better to go for national approaches? Because our previous speaker, he actually said that more integration and more competencies given to EU would do better. Actually, it's better to address those challenges on the EU level. So would you say that this standardized approach on the EU level is the way how we can tackle the current challenges?
Thank you for your great questions. That's a very great question. I think that we can consider the negative effects of a single action provided by a single nation in cyberspace. And then we have a relevant example, empirical example, for instance, about how the single nations are weak in front of the capability to contrast cyber campaign, massive cyber campaigns. And then I think that at European Union level, we are very lucky to have this supranational approach about cybersecurity with a coordination from the European Union bodies. And then we have at operational level the great job provided by the ENISA, but also the very useful framework created at legal, policy, and operational level. For instance, I think about the framework provided by the NIS directive in order to exchange information, because information sharing, it's the core of the cyber security action, the core of cyber defense, the core of the capability to maintain the essential services and critical infrastructures safe and secure, and to maintain to provide the essential services, to maintain the business continuity of these infrastructures. And then we have, for instance, I'll give you an example of, before the NIS directive, we assist in single action provided by single actors at bilateral level outside the European Union. Then what was the main effort of this situation? That now we have a heterogeneous situation with the cyber capabilities inside the European Union. Then the main aim of the European Union in cybersecurity is to increase the maturity level cybersecurity maturity level of all member states. How? With a legislative action, with obligations for all member states. It's not based on a voluntary basis, sorry, but it's based on legislation with a legal framework, with legal bindings, obligations for all member states to achieve high maturity level on cybersecurity. And then, for instance, the main spillover effect is that now we have the obligation for all member states to have a cybersecurity strategy, obligation to have information share mechanism among the European member states. Then, in other words, we are with the European Union legislative spillover effects, we achieve a high maturity level in the field of essential services protection. Then this is my opinion.
Thank you very much, Luigi. I see that there are questions coming from Facebook. This is a reminder that you can, if you're watching us live through Facebook, you can also ask your questions there. I will move it to the Q&A session, so we will bring it up at a later point after the intervention of our last speaker. Last but not least, Ms. Eva Tasheva. She's a cybersecurity governance and policy consultant, and she's a co-founder of cybersecurity lead of Cybersecurity and Energy SCS. Please, Eva, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jana, for this introduction, and thank you for having me at such a topical event today. I have to admit, I really enjoyed the discussion, the presentations of the previous speakers, and there are some points I would like to pick up. My presentation today would focus on the industry perspective. So being a consultant, I work with large government, private sector organizations. I see a big change of the attitude. I see a big change in cybersecurity in that industry. And so I would like to share with you my experience, my observations, and maybe recommendations for how to indeed take advantage of this crisis for cybersecurity. Now, you might know that up until now, it was one of the main challenges for industry, like practitioners like me, was to convince the board that cybersecurity is indeed the core business. It is crucial for any kind of industry, not only for the digital sector. And now with COVID, I think this task is much easier. So everyone knows, okay, from now on, to be in business, we need to be online, and for this we need secure system. We also need to give the access of people to our services. Of course, with increase of these services, of increase of this data, we see that there's increased also economic appetite of cyber criminals to explore this money. For instance, before the crisis, even the COVID crisis, the Risk IQ has estimated that $2.9 million is lost on cybercrime every minute. So we could imagine that this huge economic reward would drive more and more people in difficult situation to go and to explore ways to commit cybercrime. With this, we see more and more threats and more people which represent also vulnerabilities when we speak in cybersecurity terms. But my message for this is indeed it's a trend, and there's nothing we could do. There's more appetite, there would be more trials, criminals, but we shouldn't get used to it. So as previous speakers mentioned, we could do better, and we should strive to do better for cybersecurity. So these people now they are also find themselves in a new situation. So pandemic is not something we're used to. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty. Many people lost their jobs. I'm from Bulgaria. In my country, around 1,500 people lose their register as unemployed every day. So this economic stress, societal stress, being detached from family, social relations, make people even more vulnerable. So it's even easier now for cyber criminals to exploit this fear. And we've seen funny things from buying toilet paper on the streets to dangerous things online, like selling blood on the dark net. So this behavior and these new cyber crimes are something that we have to keep an eye on, and we have to face and to react timely. It was mentioned that indeed those that are more vulnerable are hit the worst, like the hospitals that are already full of patients. There's a number of cases of cyber attacks, but positive trend here I see is the, let's say, the volunteering. So there's personally participating in a few groups of cybersecurity volunteers who are there to support hospitals in case of need with whatever we want, because obviously those institutions did not have the funds or the infrastructure up until now to have sufficient ICT experts. But okay, this is valid for hospitals, but it's valid also for industry at large. We see now that all companies, small, big companies, they're in kind of a digital stretch. What I mean by that is that you have the pressure and the impulse to go quickly online to continue to do business, but you don't yet have all these tools, you don't have all this knowledge, or your customers are not aware yet. Worst of that, you don't have the ICT talent. So Digital Economy Society Index last year also found that 1 million ICT jobs are staying unfulfilled. So here we still need to work with academia, with government, to make sure that this very important, let's say, piece of the puzzle for creating cybersecurity, the specialists, is there to support the industry. And now, in all this situation, we know companies are losing a lot of money. I'm thinking of airline companies. So not only they have no operations, huge losses, at the same time they're targeted of cyber attacks. The EasyJet case of yesterday, which went public yesterday, but that's yet another discussion. So I could see this domino effect whereby people that have their data leaked through this specific case would then be more vulnerable in online shopping or reaching to their government, because their data, for instance, is already known to malicious actors. And the more services we do online, the less difficult it would be to go back and to isolate the weakest link. And so this is the situation as I see it in the industry. What I see as a next step, or something that we should all stakeholders do, is for industry and academia to work together. So we won't be able to create resilient cyber societies, resilient economy, if we don't have the skilled people, if we don't work together, and if we don't cover these, let's say, blind spots of responsibility. When you think about, okay, whose responsibility is to secure the public networks, whose responsibility is to secure the transmission of data. And I see that governments could do more. Obviously, it is difficult for everyone to gather this capacity and to put it into action. But that's why we have the EU. So in my view, the EU could play this role of guidance, of let's say facilitators, so that all the capacities come together. And maybe, who knows, one day we have an European CISO, Chief Information Security Officer.
Yeah, actually, if I can just, because as a follow-up to what you have just said, there was a question from the audience, from Victor Tomis. He was asking if the governments or the EU should subsidize the cybersecurity and ICT positions at SMEs. So whether there should be so much of an intrusion into cybersecurity of small and medium businesses, or should they be left alone? What do you think about it?
No, definitely. I think government should support SMEs. It is unthinkable for two main business to have an ICT specialist or even to go and read all the information online to secure their business, whether it is subsidies, because I can hardly think of a situation where we would have so many specialists to have full-time position, even if we have the money in an ideal world. In my view, there are always more to support universities, to target money there where we could create these specialists. So once there's supply, it would be easier also for SMEs to work with consultants. So this is another trend in my sector. Most of us are consultants now because you could help more clients at the same time, so you're not locked down in one single company.
Great, Eva, thank you very much. It was very interesting, and I want to maybe already move to the Q&A session. We already asked one question from the audience, so I want to go back to the one which was asked earlier via Facebook. I asked this to both of our speakers. It was about the European Cybersecurity Agency. What do you think about it? What do you think about its establishment? Because this agency could spearhead the innovation in cybersecurity across all the EU member states. And the question was asked because of the last year's hacking, which happened in Bulgaria, of the Bulgarian Revenue Agency. So far the government hasn't taken any measures to fix this. So I think this is why the question came up, like how can the European Cybersecurity Agency be involved in this kind of issues? Yes, maybe Luigi, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll move to you and then we'll go back to Eva.
Sorry, can you repeat the answer, because I have a problem with my, I don't know if you can, okay.
Yes, sure. It was about the European Cybersecurity Agency. What do you think about its establishment? How much can it actually help to spread know-how in the member states? And in this, it was asked in the context of last year's hacking, which happened in Bulgaria, and a lot of data was leaked. So what is the role of European Cyber Agency in this?
Yes, the role of the European Union agency, the NISA, it's the new role, because it's now a permanent agency of the European Union after the approval of the Cybersecurity Act. It's quite interesting to combine the enhancement of the nature of the European Union agency as a permanent agency with the approval of the Cybersecurity Act, because the Cybersecurity Act, it's a regulation which will create a common standards framework at the European Union, in particular about ICTs, tools, procedures, and etc., which will be used on the sector of critical infrastructures in particular, and in general at the European Union level. And the main aim of the agency, of the NISA, is to follow these procedures, but also to release advice for member states on how to implement their capabilities at legal and operational level. Then in other words, we can consider ENISA as an agency that release capacity building procedures or efforts in order to enhance the maturity level of the all member states inside then to provide assistance at technical level with the guidelines, but also at policy level with recommendations and so on. Then this is the main aim of the ENISA. And then again, the main aim that we achieve with the Cybersecurity Act is that ENISA now it's a permanent agency, the permanent agency of the European Union on cybersecurity.
Yes, definitely. I just received the results of the opinion poll, which we did on Twitter. And we asked the question whether people trust their devices to keep their data safe, how much they feel as like secured. And actually 80% of the answers were no. So we can see that actually people do not feel safe about their data. They don't feel secure in the cyberspace. So how do you think this could be addressed on the EU level? Maybe Eva, you could continue with that.
Yes, thank you. This is good to hear. People don't feel secure because they're not. So we avoid the fake feeling of security. If I link it to the previous question, and I think it's very relevant, the role of the agency of ENISA with the permanent mandate last year, it also received more funding, so they're expanding the operations and they have a mandate to do more. I have personally insisted on including in the Cybersecurity Act aspects like cyber hygiene, as education, communication. So there in the regulation itself, you find a lot of small let's say tools that could help first secure devices through certification, but also inform users of what are the risks actually are relevant to these devices. You know, in security there is no perfect security, so we could not expect some kind of panacea or ENISA policing let's say the weak devices, for instance, if this is the topic, but what we could expect is for people to be better aware of what are the risks. And so if those are unacceptable risks, then we have to do something about it, whether it is develop technical standards, whether it is implementing more security measures to mitigate the risk, or simply just, you know, select the good better secure devices, but this choice should be left on the users. And the role of ENISA is to empower and inform.
Thank you, Eva. I want to ask the same question to Luigi, how to address those insecurities that users have. And maybe I will combine this with the question which we have just received from Tom Murian about how we can feel secure in the cyberspace at the domestic level as well, when sometimes these are domestic actors and domestic groups that stand behind the attacks. So how do we deal with these insecurities, and especially on the domestic level?
Okay, this is a very great question. For this reason, we need a comprehensive approach at the national level, but also at the supranational level. Because the main question is, who is behind the cyber attacks? Then, if you consider that in the near future, the perimeter of the scale of the cyber activities will be very great, very large, For instance, I think about Internet of Things and artificial intelligence and so on. Then the question is, are we able as at individual level to secure our homework, our home, house, or our local activities, and then are we able to secure our cyberspace? The question, unfortunately, is not, because we live in an interconnected and interdependent situation. Then the problem is that maybe cyber attacks can use my Wi-Fi system to, for instance, to attack my network and to steal my money, or maybe they can use my Wi-Fi to attack, for instance, the critical infrastructure or the power grids and or national sensitive infrastructure and so on. Then the main question is how single states will be able to secure their cyberspace in front of the spreading of the Internet of Things. Then this is the very question, not only at single level, but also at national level and European Union level. Then this, unfortunately, this is an open question, and then we have a lot of negative empirical evidence about the capability of cyber attacks to create real damages. Yeah.
Thank you, Luigi. Very interesting. I see that our discussion is coming to an end. We're running out of time. So Eva, would you like maybe to give some final remarks? Just as a short point, final conclusion.
Thank you for that. Maybe it's clear now we're in cybersecurity together, no matter if we're practitioners, academics, industry, or if we have nothing to do with cybersecurity, right? So let's find a way to work better together and let ENISE help us coordinate this effort.
Yeah, great. On this positive note, I want to conclude our debate. Thank you very much for your comments, for your interventions. It was very insightful and interesting for me, and also to have this very nice, let's say, combination of speakers from different sectors, from academia, from policy making, from politics. And here I want to give the floor to Andrei for the very final concluding words.
Yes, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Jana. Thank you, Luigi. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Niku, wherever you are. And thank you to all the participants who joined us today for this very important and topical webinar. I hope you all enjoyed yourself, and I hope that we're all leaving this webinar with a couple of learned lessons, and we're gonna be more careful with our cybersecurity from now on. I would also like to take this opportunity to encourage everybody to check our past webinars. This is our 7th, so we've tackled issues like democratic accountability before, data privacy, disinformation, freedom of the press, how is education and religion affected by the coronavirus. So as Luigi said, all of these things are interconnected, and we will try for this series to look at many different aspects of our lives that are affected by the coronavirus pandemic. And with this in mind, I highly encourage you to check out our next webinar, which will take place, as we got you used to, every Wednesday morning from 9:30 a.m. Central European time, Paris time, Brussels time. And we're going to keep doing this for a while because we think it's really, really important to discuss all of these topics and to bring them out in the open. Thank you so much for everybody. Wish you a great day. Thank you again to our speakers and our participants. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you next week.